There are moments in a woman's life when she feels an invisible hand redirecting her steps, as if the universe itself is quietly whispering, "Not this way." At first it may look like disappointment, like a door closing or a connection fading without explanation. But beneath the surface, there is a sacred orchestration unfolding, a gentle protection that keeps her from giving her heart to someone who was never meant to hold it. When God protects a woman, it is rarely dramatic. It is subtle, almost silent, a growing discomfort, a truth revealed, a sudden clarity washing over her like morning light. And in those moments, she begins to learn that being kept away is not rejection, it is preservation. It is God's way of making space for peace, for alignment, and for a love that recognizes her soul without requiring her to shrink. Singing chorale brothers, "Hey, hey," in the government sector. When a woman is walking towards something that is not meant for her, the disturbance often begins quietly. A sense of heaviness settles in her chest, conversations feel strained, and interactions that once seemed promising begin to drain rather than uplift her. This disruption is not punishment, it is a divine interruption. It is the universe leaning in, nudging her intuition to awaken. God does not allow anything to grow in her life that would eventually break her spirit. So the discomfort she feels is the earliest signal that something is misaligned with her higher path. She may find herself confused, wondering why things that seemed calm suddenly feel chaotic. What looks stable may begin to wobble, revealing cracks she didn't notice at first. This shift is intentional. When a connection or a relationship starts threatening her emotional peace, God unsettles it so she cannot stay asleep in a place where she deserves to be awake. The confusion becomes a messenger, telling her to pay attention. These disruptions are signs that the energy surrounding her is no longer safe for her heart. Sometimes the disruption shows up as conflict that has no clear cause. Words become sharper, attitudes shift, and the emotional temperature between her and the wrong man turns cold or unpredictable. These changes are not accidents, they are divine alerts. The peace she once felt is slowly replaced by anxiety, and even if she tries to reason it away, something in her refuses to settle. This is God protecting her from becoming emotionally tied to someone who cannot sustain the weight of her heart. This is God protecting her from becoming emotionally tied to someone who cannot sustain the weight of her heart. And when her spirit begins to dim, the protection becomes even stronger. A woman may notice her creativity shrinking, her joy fading, or her energy being drained without explanation. These inner shifts are spiritual alarms. A man who disturbs her spirit will never carry the wisdom to honor her soul. So God steps in, shaking the ground beneath anything that threatens her harmony. The disruption is not meant to hurt her, but to prevent her from losing herself in the wrong place. Her inner peace is sacred, and divine protection guards it fiercely. That's why God removes her from situations where she is not respected, valued, or emotionally safe. He will magnify the distance, expose the truth, or create circumstances that force her to see what she tried to ignore. This is the beauty of divine interference. It reveals what her heart could not recognize. Her peace is the compass. God ensures it never gets lost. Even when she feels disappointed or abandoned, she is being redirected. Every disruption is a shield, not a setback. God dismantles anything that endangers her emotional clarity or spiritual growth. And although she may not immediately understand the withdrawal, the silence, or the unraveling, she will one day realize that losing what threatened her peace was the very thing that kept her whole. The destruction was love, protection, and guidance wrapped inside discomfort, proof that she was never walking alone. There comes a time when a woman feels the path beneath her feet shift, not because she chose it, but because something greater intervened. A delay she didn't expect appears, communication slows, or opportunities dissolve just when she thought they were finally aligning. These moments can feel like setbacks, but they are not. They are rearrangements made with precision, ensuring she does not invest her heart where it will not be honored. Redirection is not a denial of love. It is a safeguard placed gently between her and what is not meant to stay. When something is not aligned with her soul, God creates space where she might have forced connection. Distance becomes a teacher, showing her what cannot grow, what cannot deepen, and what cannot support her spirit. The pauses she experiences are intentional, giving her time to breathe, reflect, and see truth without emotional fog. Every delay is designed to slow her enough that she notices what she once overlooked. This is divine protection disguised as waiting. Endings, though painful, are some of the clearest forms of guidance. What falls apart was never meant to be the foundation of her future. The unraveling may feel sudden, but it is often the culmination of truths long ignored. God removes what she would have held on to too tightly, not to punish her, but to free her from a story that could only wound her in the long run. An ending is not the failure of love. It is an act of love from the divine. Distance, emotional, physical, or spiritual, is another form of protection. Sometimes the space between her and the wrong person expands naturally, sometimes painfully. But in that space, clarity emerges. She begins to see mismatches, inconsistencies, and patterns that were hidden when she was too close. Distance reveals what presence disguised. It gives her the strength to choose herself, to recognize misalignment, and to step away from connections that drain more than they give. Delays, endings, and distance are not random events. They are signals that she is being guided toward a better chapter, one free from confusion and emotional compromise. When a door closes, another path opens, not out of convenience, but out of divine intention. She may resist, she may question, but eventually she understands. Nothing is taken without purpose. What feels like loss is often protection in slow motion. Redirection is God's way of ensuring she walks toward what will nourish her rather than deplete her. She is being prepared for peace, stability, and a love that arrives without forcing anything. In time, she will look back and realize that every delay preserved her heart, every ending saved her future, and every distance brought her closer to the life she was always meant to live. There is a distinct softness that surrounds a connection meant for her. When a woman meets someone who is aligned with her spirit, she doesn't feel the need to shrink, bend, or twist herself into shapes just to be understood. The energy flows with ease, communication feels natural, and her presence is welcomed without conditions. A true partner moves with her, not against her. He doesn't ask her to quiet her voice, dim her light, or betray herself for the sake of keeping peace. The alignment feels like breathing, steady, effortless, and sustaining. But when she finds herself with the wrong person, everything becomes a negotiation with her own soul. She feels the pressure to give more than she receives, to tolerate more than she should, and to excuse behavior that chips away at her self-worth. A woman knows the connection is misaligned when she begins sacrificing her boundaries, her needs, and her identity for the sake of maintaining harmony. The wrong man demands pieces of her that she cannot afford to lose, slowly draining her emotional strength. In such relationships, loving becomes labor without reward. She may find herself apologizing for things she didn't do, hiding parts of herself to avoid conflict, or suppressing her dreams to fit comfortably into someone else's insecurities. These sacrifices are subtle at first, but they accumulate. Her internal world becomes quieter, her joy fading, her passions dimming, her confidence thinning. This is how the wrong connection reveals itself. It requires her to disappear piece by piece until she barely recognizes the woman she once was. True alignment, however, allows her to expand. A healthy partner does not fear her strength, he celebrates it. He does not view her independence as a threat, but as a beautiful expression of her essence. With the right man, she feels safe to express her emotions, her ideas, her boundaries, and her truth without walking on the fragile glass of someone else's ego. She grows not out of necessity, but because the environment is nurturing. Her authenticity is not only accepted, it is valued. A true partner does not ask her to choose between herself and the relationship. He understands that love thrives when both people remain whole. He does not demand emotional sacrifices that cost her peace. Instead, he protects her softness, supports her evolution, and meets her with reciprocity. He aligns with her purpose, her pace, and her inner world. With him, connection is not a burden she carries. It is a space where she rests and rises. The wrong partner requires her to become less so he can feel like more. But the right partner encourages her to stand tall, knowing her strength does not diminish his. When alignment is real, love flows without forcing, respect is mutual without reminders, and both souls move together without sacrificing themselves at the altar of approval. In that alignment, she discovers a truth. The right love never asks her to be less than who she was created to be. There comes a moment in a woman's journey when she finally realizes that love is not something she must chase, negotiate, or earn through suffering. It is something that meets her at the level of her self-worth. When she begins to understand the value of her heart, her time, and her energy, she stops settling for half-formed affection and inconsistent connection. Her worth becomes a filter that separates what is fleeting from what is real. And in that awareness, she becomes aligned with something deeper, allowing divine guidance to steer her toward what mirrors her true self. Understanding her worth means recognizing the patterns that once kept her stuck. She no longer romanticizes potential or excuses emotional unavailability. She sees clearly what drains her spirit and what nourishes it. And instead of forcing a bond that was never meant to last, she steps back with grace, trusting that what is meant will not require her to abandon herself. This trust becomes a spiritual turning point, opening her to connections grounded in truth rather than illusion. The universe responds to her shift in awareness. As she lets go of what hurts, drains, or confuses her, she makes room for what brings peace. Divine guidance becomes louder once she stops resisting the signs. A closed door feels less like rejection and more like direction. A fading connection feels less like loss and more like protection. She begins to believe that every redirection was preparing her for something greater, something stable, something aligned. And in that belief, her heart becomes receptive to the right connection. The right connection does not arrive in chaos. It arrives quietly, naturally, without forcing or convincing. When she trusts the guidance that leads her away from what is wrong, she becomes free to receive what is right. The love meant for her doesn't confuse her spirit or undermine her intuition. It affirms her identity, respects her boundaries, and honors her emotions. She doesn't need to perform to be valued. She simply exists, and her presence is enough. This is the power of divine timing meeting self-awareness. When the right connection appears, it aligns with her peace, not her wounds. It fits without resistance, grows without pressure, and deepens without fear. She recognizes it because it doesn't demand her to shrink. Instead, it allows her to rise. Her worth becomes the foundation on which the connection is built, and her trust in divine guidance becomes the compass that sustains it. She feels safe, understood, and seen in ways that once felt unreachable. This is how she knows the connection is real. In the end, the right connection is not something she stumbles into. It is something she becomes ready for. Once she honors her worth and listens to the quiet voice guiding her steps, she attracts a love aligned with her soul, a love that matches her growth, respects her truth, and meets her where she stands. Divine timing is never late. It simply waits for her to recognize what she deserves, so the connection meant for her can finally arrive and stay. As this journey comes to a close, the message becomes beautifully clear. A woman's path is never left to randomness. Every disruption that unsettled her peace, every delay that made her question her timing, and every ending that felt like heartbreak was part of a divine orchestration shaping her into the woman she was always meant to become. She learns through experience that protection is not always gentle. It is often disguised as disappointment, silence, or separation. Yet within each moment, there is a deeper truth unfolding. She is being guided, guarded, and grown. When she is kept from the wrong person, it is not because she is unworthy of love, but because she is worthy of a love that aligns with her soul. When she must walk away from chaos, it is because peace is her true home. And when life redirects her path, it is because destiny refuses to settle for anything less than what fits her spirit. She becomes stronger, wiser, and more attuned to her inner knowing. She begins to trust what her heart whispers and what her intuition reveals. In the end, she discovers that real connection does not take from her, it expands her. It does not require her to shrink. It allows her to stand fully in her truth. And when the right connection arrives, it finds her grounded in self-respect, surrounded by divine clarity, and anchored in the understanding that she is deserving of a love that honors her. So let her steps be guided, her heart be protected, and her spirit remain open. What is meant for her will never threaten her peace. It will deepen it. What is guided by God will never require her to lose herself. It will help her become more of who she truly is. Thank you, and God bless you.